All right, let's see if we can hear the difference between a short speaker cable and a long speaker cable on a subwoofer. And also, let's see if we can see the difference in the waveform and the real-time analyzer. So I've got a setup here where I've got a SB28L acoustics, and here I've got a TAC recorder set up, capturing the sound up close. And we've got this old school Ivy IE30 real-time analyzer. And then this is powered by an L Acoustics LA8. And here we got this really cool switcher that will let us A/B. And there's an 18-inch cable here and a 150-foot cable down there. So we're going to compare the short cable 18 to 150. Now there is another 25 feet of cable here, so the short one will be 27 feet versus 180 feet. And they're 12 gauge wires through NL4s. And in this position is a short cable, and that's the long. And next, what I'm going to do is to determine whether or not this is audible, I'm going to do a blind listening test, and Cassidy's going to help me. I'm going to leave the warehouse here. I'm going to wander around. She's going to switch the A/B switch back and forth so I don't know what position it's in. And I'm going to come back and see if I can hear the difference between the two cables in a blind listening test. All right, so I'm going to head on out and we'll be back. All right, so let's go take a look around the shop. She's going to arbitrarily switch those a bunch of times. And I'm actually going to get out. Oh, we bought a new venue console last week. That's here getting set up. That's kind of cool to see. Where we have our H3000 printout under the desk. This is a smaller version of what I actually do the videos in front of. Oh, we can go to my office. Grill to Chuck Dukowski's bass rig from Black Flag, and some old Punk Flyers, Soundgarden set list, Pearl Jam 20 movie. I gave him a bunch of footage for that. And some other bits and stuff that I keep. This is when ML Procise sent me a cease and desist letter for me buying the website mlprocise.com and putting a picture of me and some Statue of David spandex underwear up on it. Jane's Addiction Backstage Pass, 1987 at the Roxy. All right, let's go ahead and head back in and see if the me part of we, let's see if I can hear the difference. I'm going to close my eyes. Let me see if I go here. Close my eyes. Switch. Switch. Okay, when I say switch, I mess up. So I need to do this. Whatever that is, leave it there. That's quieter. That's the long cable. That's louder. That's the short cable.
That was correct.
Awesome. Okay, switch it a bunch of times, turn it off, do some fake switches, and let's try it. That's the long cable, that's quieter.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty convinced that I can hear that.
I can't hear it at all.
You can't hear it at all?
Well, and I know which one it is, and I still can't.
Yeah, I can hear it. One of them's just got a kind of a, and the other one's kind of got a, it's just got a little bit of a stumble before it comes in. It's like, instead of, it's, That's a stumble. It's just gonna stumble. It's like late. Like you hear it in the room more in the speaker. Yeah. Well, cool. That does the first part of the test. Now what we'll do is let's take a look at the analyzer here. Switch. All right, I did the listening test, and I can hear the difference on a double 18 sub in that environment. How about we set this up so that you can test your system and hearing to see if you can hear the difference between a long and short cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play 10 pulses of one type, either short or long cable, and then 10 pulses of the other. I'm going to show on the screen an apple or an orange, and they'll correlate to one of them. Determine whether the apple is long or short, or the orange is long or short. It's going to happen 2 times for each, and then I'll divulge which is which and see if you can hear the difference. Cool. Are you able to hear it yet? Kind of?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Okay. All right. Could you hear a difference? Was it the apple or the orange that was the long cable? Cool, cool. I'll put it up on the screen here. Okay, so I've switched from the SB28 60 setting, where it went up to 60 hertz, up to 100 hertz. And so this is a wider bandwidth. We'll go ahead and do 10 pulses of each and see how audible the difference is for this. Okay, cool. And let's do one more adventure. Let's do 100 feet instead of 150. So I'm going to shut this off for a second and we'll switch out the cable. So I'm going to fire this up. And right now it's in the short. Can you hear the difference?
Yeah.
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 One of them's just got a hit to it, and the other is kind of like a ooh, ooh, ooh. Okay, so
There's one in the chest and one in the stomach. That's
agreed. Cool. I think this is interesting. It's audible. 100 feet, 130 feet versus 30 feet. That's cool. I was having trouble figuring out how to hear this earlier, and this seems to be working. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the waveforms. This is one of them. There's the other one, and we should be able to see that they are slightly offset from each other. Let's go ahead and I'm moving one of them down in relation to the other and moving it up. And let's lay them right on top of each other. And we can see that from the tail end of it here, where they're really kind of lining up. And we're seeing a little aberration right here, but primarily look here. Look at this dip right here and right there, up here, and that area there. Let's go ahead and move it up. And if I line the tops of these up, we can see that the bottoms are off. And it won't quite line up. So we are seeing a slight differential in the waveform, and we can actually go ahead and look at this in Premiere. All right, I'm in Adobe Premiere, and I've expanded up the waveforms from the recording for the video, the stuff you'll actually be hearing. And here we have a 25-foot plus 18-inch. Here's the short cable, and here's the 150, and here's a single pulse. This messy stuff you see right here is the switch click of transitioning from the two, and we can see that we've got our pulse here. If we look carefully, we can see that we've got this little dip here and that center line, and look at the dip here, it drops below the center line. Here, this angle is a little bit steeper over there. There's some more area under this. It's just a little bit louder, and we can actually scroll across and see. So that's our good marker right there. On the longer cable, we see that little dip going below, and we can see that it happens repetitively and consistently. It's not just an aberration for that. And if we go the other way into the transition there, and we can see that this constantly remains above the line. So there is a slight variation in the waveform, though they look extremely similar. Let's go ahead and do another thing. I'm going to zoom out a bit here. We're going to look at the meter here. And I put the mouse right where those peaks are. And now see how it's above the peak. The peaks are above the mouse right now. And back onto the mouse. So we can see that there's a slight variation in the output level or the voltage, and it's very slight. We can see what that is. We can use, we'll just cut this, and we'll just cut a peak here, and we'll cut one over here, and we will take a look at the volume level, audio gain, and it says this is peak amplitude minus 11 dB, and this one here says audio gain peak amplitude 10.2 dB. So it's saying that's a 0.8 dB differential between the two peaks there at 150 feet, 180 feet versus 30 foot or so. Cable, 25 and change. We could look at the 100 as well. Okay, so here we are comparing the short cable to the 130 foot cable, the 100 plus 25. And here we see that dip again, and we see it dropping down to the line. We can go ahead and look at the dB differential of these two and look at our audio gain, 10.2. The same thing for the short, and audio gain for the 10.7. Okay, so the short cable is minus 10.2. The 100-foot cable is minus 10.7. And the 150-foot was minus 11. I just thought it'd be interesting to look at the visuals of the sonic differences and see how subtle they are. All right, so we listened to a short cable and a long cable, and there was a difference between the two that was audible enough to do a blind test. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see it in the waveforms. But what does that difference exactly sound like? Let's go ahead and find out. So to do that, I'm going to grab this load that I made here and set it over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace the speaker load here, which is this. Unplug the speaker load, and we're going to put in a 4 ohm resistive load. Now this will be slightly different. So this might not be exactly the same because a resistive load is not identical, but this should give us a good idea. Then what we're going to do is connect the speaker from that point there after the cable to this point here before the cable. So now what that'll let us do is this load will sit across the amp, and the speaker is actually hooked up to the beginning and the end of whichever cable was selected. And I'll put that in the short cable. Let's turn it up, turn it on, and there we have it. That's the loss of the little 2.5 foot or 18-inch long speaker cable. That's the amount of signal that is being lost to the resistance. Now let's go ahead and put in the 100-foot cable and see how much loss is there. Now this is half the loss. This is just the loss in one of the wires. So theoretically it'd be maybe twice the voltage, so 6 dB louder than that, which would start to get a little more substantial. So another test I thought of doing was to take a laser and use one of the line array lasers here and shoot that at the cone such that it's barely touching the surround when it's at maximum excursion with the short cable. Then going to the long cable and seeing if there was less excursion, if we could see a difference in the physical motion using the laser as a visual on that. So let's go ahead and fire that up in the short mode. So in the short mode, we're going to try it. See that little speck of green showing up there. Okay, go ahead and switch to the long. Short. The difference that we're looking for, I believe, isn't a straight volume difference. The ability for it to get there quickly. There's a sound difference, a tonal difference, or a peak or delivery time difference. And I think that's what's more audible than the actual level discrepancy of a fraction of a dB. For the last adventure here, let's listen to 3 different signals. The first one will be the short cable, the 25-foot cable plus an 18-inch little jumper there. The next will be 100-foot plus the 25 to the speaker. And the third will be just the loss of the 100-foot cable at 4 ohms. And what we'll listen for is the difference in tone between the signal that's getting to the speaker versus the signal that's lost in the cable that doesn't get to the speaker. And what I noticed is that the signal lost in the cable has more high end, it's more punchy sounding than the actual signal that's getting to the speaker. And that kind of makes sense to me with all of this, is that what's getting lost in the cable is some of the punch, some of that attack, the ability of the amp to deliver current very quickly is mitigated or softened by this long resistive cable in line. And with a short cable, it can deliver that energy. Maybe it's even the sound of damping factor. And by maintaining the damping factor with a short cable, we get that quick punch. And with the long cable, we lose it. And listening to the sound of the long cable loss lets us hear that. Now, I've normalized all 3 of these to be the exact same volume level. They're all at minus 6 dB on the meter that's being uploaded to YouTube. So you'll have a good reference point and you can listen to the tonal differences between the 3. Okay, so we listened to the sound of a short cable, a long cable, and a longer cable, and looked at the different waveforms, listened to the losses in the cables, and tried to measure the mechanical offset with the laser, at least see it. Everything I did is kind of real hands-on and, lo-fi. I didn't use any real expensive test equipment that gave us extremely accurate data, because what I'm really interested in is not necessarily these charts and the numbers, but the physical reality. What does it sound like? And what is actually going on in a more tangible, tactile way? I hope you found all this interesting and helpful, and perhaps give you an idea of what to listen for when the cables are too long. Maybe you're mixing on a sound system you're familiar with and it doesn't sound quite right. Perhaps it's long cables, and maybe this video will give you a better idea of what the difference between long cables and short cables sounds like. All right, well, I hope you found this informative and helpful, and I've got more videos on subwoofers and different aspects like transient response and other factors coming soon. Cool, cool.